anything but average. And this series is basically about success. And we're learning how do you define success and how is a person able to know if they have achieved success in their lives. And we started by looking at three components of success. And we said the first thing is that success is reaching for a goal and achieving that goal in your life. Proverbs 13:19, it says this, a desire realized is sweet to the soul. So what that says is when God gives you a dream, when God gives you a goal, when God puts a desire in your heart and you're reaching for it, and even though it may be challenging, it may be difficult, that when you finally get to that place when you're able to seize your dreams, whenever you're able to accomplish your dreams, you're able to have a taste of the fulfillment of those dreams and those goals, that it's a sweet feeling to the soul. It's a sweet feeling. It's a special feeling inside of us when we've worked hard for something, when we've disciplined ourselves, when we've denied ourselves some of the things that are possible. When we finally get there, it's a sweet feeling in our souls. How many of you have ever set a goal for something and you reached it? All right, we have 3 people that have done that, so I'm kidding. But it's a good feeling. And you know, sometimes we set a goal and we reach it, and then we think, okay, we need a different goal next time. When I was 30 years old, I had this crazy idea, and that I was going to run the Houston Marathon. And you know, God did not build me to run marathons. You know, I just don't have the body type and all that kind of things. And so, but I don't know if it was. I think it was a pre-midlife crisis. Are any of you in pre-midlife crisis? Are any of you in full-blown midlife crisis? Or any of you in old life crisis, young life crisis? So I had this idea. I wanted to prove to myself somehow that I was still the man that I was when I was 18. So I said, I'm going to run a marathon. And I trained for 6 months. And my goal was not to win the marathon. You know, all the Kenyans and all those guys that were serious, they were like a couple miles ahead of me when they started the race. My goal was just to finish the race. And I remember as I came through that line, you know, the only people that were behind me were, you know, people in walkers and stuff like that. I was the only ones behind me. But it didn't matter because I finished. I set a goal and I finished. And not very many people can say that they ran, you know, 26.2 miles. That's very important, 26.2. You know, when the marathon first started, it was 26 miles. It got the 0.2 because the Queen of England wanted to see them finish right in front of the palace. I can tell you, it doesn't seem like the 0.2 is very much. After 26 miles, the 0.2 is very much. It's very, very difficult. But just to set a goal, and even though it's difficult, but when we achieve it, it's a sweet feeling. It gives a sweet feeling to our souls. And we said that people who live above average, they're always reaching for something that's beyond where they're at. When we quit reaching for something, when we quit trying to go above and beyond where we're at, that's what we've said is we're in a slow state of death. People are always reaching, and so you know, no matter how old I get, I always want to be reaching for more. I always wanting to be setting goals and dreams to accomplish as much as I can while I'm here on earth. And then we said the second component of success from last week is that successful people, they reach financial security. And one of the signs of maturity is when we are able to actually support ourselves financially. You know, you got kids growing up, and the goal is that we're gonna help them to become independent of us, dependent upon God, but independent of us. And it's a good feeling, and it feels good for individuals when they're able to get away from their parents, and they're able to get to a place of financial security, and they can handle their own things. And we said what happens as you read the Bible, so many of the men and women in the Bible, as they obeyed God, one of the side blessings that came their way is that God also blessed them abundantly in the financial realm. And we said that there's 2 things we know about money. Money has an upside and a downside. The upside is when God blesses us with abundance, we can use that to influence things. Money can be used for influence. And so if God blesses you and you get to a certain state, you can begin to sow money into the kingdom of God. We talked last week about how people have just incredibly, with great generosity, have blessed this church. And this is the only reason we have buildings and we have youth ministries and all these things is because people have used money to influence the kingdom of God. But also, money has a downside, and some people, as God starts to bless them, they get arrogant and prideful, and they don't think they need God anymore. There's a good side and a downside. And the last thing we talked about last week, and we said that the highest level of success is when the people closest to us admire and respect us. You can accomplish great things in life, and you can make a ton of money, but if the people who love you and know you the best, your children, your spouse, your close friends, if they don't admire and respect the life you're living, then to me that's not success. Success is when the people closest to us who know us the best love and respect us. And so today we're going to talk about several tools we need to develop in our lives to reach success if we're going to break through average and live above average. There are several things, and the first thing is this, that we have to learn to operate within our sweet spot. Now, when I mention sweet spot, some of you may not know what I'm talking about, but when I think about the sweet spot, if you think about professional sports like golf, you know, when they swing the club, those professionals, if you ever watch TV, the sound that the contact between the club and the ball makes when a professional hits it, in some of you is quite different. It sounds, you know, but when they hit the golf ball with the club head on the sweet spot, the velocity and the sound is different. And like with a baseball player, when someone hits the ball on the sweet spot of the bat, it just launches with great velocity. I mean, you know right away when it leaves the bat, it's going to be a home run or whatever. And even a tennis player, when they hit on the sweet spot, it goes with great velocity in the direction that they want to go. Whenever I was in Lafayette, when I was a youth pastor in Lafayette, I had never played golf before, but a lot of ministers in town played golf. And they would always play at this country club, and it was very expensive. And then I figured out because the golf resort, the golf club, let all the ministers in town play for free. So I met all the ministers in town in Lafayette on the golf course. And they weren't very good. I was terrible. But every once in a while, I remember one time, I hit the ball on the sweet spot, and it just launched. And I was so happy. My friend says, "Terry, you hit the ball 50 yards over the green." I said, "It didn't matter. Did you hear what that sounded like?" That right on the sweet spot with great velocity. I can go find the ball or I'll drop another one. A few years ago, one of our members, Justin Bass, he was going to spring training, and so he told me, his parents had a batting cage. Dad has a batting cage because all the boys played baseball, and so I told him I wanted to go, hit some balls with him and maybe coach him up a little bit before he left, and he said that would be awesome, And so we went in the batting cage, and I hadn't hit a baseball since the Little League. And, I think what happened when Justin hit, he dialed the pitch speed back. But when I went up there, he put it at greater velocity, trying to make me look bad. And I tell you, it was a cool day. It was in like April, I think. And, man, I was just working up a sweat. As I'm just hacking at the ball, and my hands hurt so bad. My hands hurt so bad because I was hitting it wrong. And so he keeps coaching me. Finally, I get so tired, so I just start sticking the bat out. And Justin's like, "Now you're getting the hang of it." And so one time in 2 hours, it hit the sweet spot, and the ball just launched off there. I said, "Hey, Justin, that was over center field." He said, "No, you just flied out to the first baseman." Hey, no one likes a critic. But there's a difference. Well, here's what I've learned. You don't have to hit the ball hard if you hit it on the sweet spot. And if we're going to be successful in life, if we're going to live above average lives, then we have to learn to hit life in our sweet spot. All of us have a sweet spot in our life. All of us have something that God has designed us to do. And when we find it and devote ourselves to it, in that area we can become great in our lives. We can live above average in our lives. Let's read some scripture. Psalms 139 verse 14 says this, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Would you say that with me? Say, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Some people don't believe that. Some of you can't have a hard time saying that. Some people believe that they're not good at anything. Listen, the psalmist said, I praise you, I praise God, because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I am fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God. So we're not just made as individuals. We're made in the image of God, and we are fearfully and we're wonderfully, or you could say we're specifically made. Ephesians 2:10 says, for we are God's handiwork. That word handiwork means poem. We're God's poem, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared us in advance to do. I want you to say this with me. I'm created in Jesus Christ to do good works. God already knows what the good works we need to be doing with our lives are. All we have to do is figure it out. We have to figure out what has God specifically designed me, what has God specifically designed my children to do, because in that area, when I find my sweet spot, I have a great chance of living above average. I have a great chance of being great in something. So for us to be successful, we have to hit life from our sweet spot. We have to operate from our strengths. See, all of us have strengths and weaknesses. And some people misunderstand. I know some people that all they try to do is work on their weaknesses. You can improve on your weaknesses, but you're only going to get them to a certain level because it's a weakness in your life. If you work on your strengths, that is what you can excel in. That's what you can do great things in. So God has designed us with strengths and weaknesses, and where our strengths are, that's where we find our sweet spot. And the only way we can reach high levels of success is to discover our strengths and discover where our sweet spot is. And, here's the thing. I don't have the ability or potential to be great at everything. You don't either. Let me give you an example. I love world missions. I love global missions. I've been all over the world. I've done all kind of incredible things. But one thing I realized right away, I even thought one time, well, maybe I'm supposed to be on the mission field. Maybe I'm supposed to dedicate my life in a country. But there's only one problem. I am terrible at linguistics. I have friends that can speak 3 and 4 and 5 languages. Some people tell me I speak half a language. I listen to myself sometimes when I speak, and I watch things, and I'm like, Jesus, help me. You're butchering words and things like that. But I have taken 3 years of Spanish, and all I can speak is in broken sentences. It's just not good. So for me to go to a country where I would have to become proficient at another language to speak the way I do here would be very, very difficult. And so I realized that if I dedicated my life to a country, I could only be a decent missionary, good at best. I could never be great. But you know what I can do for world missions? I can raise a lot of money for projects going on around the world. I can send teams of people over there. Something else that I can do is I've done leadership conferences all over the world because I have an interpreter. It's really awesome. I just tell them what to say, and then they help me and say it better than I told them to. But we can't. Here's the thing. We can be good at a lot of things. We can only be great at one thing. What's the one thing that you can be great in? What's the one thing that God has designed you to be great in? We're going to help you figure that out this morning. When I was in college, I was going for physical therapy, a physical therapy degree. But when I got to college, I started taking speech classes. I didn't want to. I had to. And I just excelled in speech classes. They didn't bother me. It didn't make me nervous. I could just make stuff up and go. Well, my friends would be sick for 2 days. They go into speech class one day, and I go in the restroom, and my friends, losing whatever he's eaten for the last 2 days. I'm like, what's wrong with you? He's like, I got to speak in 5 minutes. And one of my friends started hyperventilating in front of the class. Everyone felt bad for him. What do? Well, guess what? Speaking in front of people was not their sweet spot. And they didn't, they didn't care what they made on the grade. They just wanted to get through it. One time, Tracy, she kind of likes behind the scenes stuff. So one day she had to go speak to a big group of people. And so she was saying, I'm just worried about my introduction. How do I get things going? And so she said, what do you do? I was like, well, it just depends. I'll be sitting there during worship and I may think of a joke, or I don't know I know where I'm going. I just don't know how I'm going to get started. And she's like, that's terrible help. I asked you to help me. And she said, that's terrible help. That's I'm going to fail. And so think about this with me. One of the problems in America, one of the problems with the so-called American dream, is that we tell students that they can be anything they want to be. That if you just work hard, if you discipline yourself, you can do anything that you want to be. That's a lie. That's a lie. That is not true. We all can't do anything we want to do. We can only be great in a few things. Let me give you an example. Braden, can I use you as an example? I guess so, since I just called you up here. Okay, Braden, come on up here with me. Now, Braden and I, teamwork here, neither one of us could ever be a center in the NBA because we're very short. It doesn't matter how many basketball camps we go to. It doesn't matter if Jay and Chris tell Braden, you can do it, you can do it, you can be in the NBA, you can be a center. It's not going to happen. All right, thank you, sir. It's not going to happen. You have to, first of all, you have to have length, you have to be tall, and you have to have a certain skill set, right? So not everyone can be a center in the NBA. And so, listen, we have to discover our sweet spot. And one of the greatest things that parents can do for their kids is to have a keen eye on what their kids are good at, what their kids excel at, what their sweet spot may be, and help guide them and nurture that and get them to a place where they can become great. That's the greatest thing that a parent can do. The reason that so many people are strung out on drugs, the reason that so many people are having all kinds of addiction problems and anxiety problems and all these things is because they haven't discovered their sweet spot. When you discover your sweet spot, it arises passion and inspiration within you, and it causes you to soar and to become great. So let me help you kind of find your sweet spot. Let me ask you some questions. First of all, the first question is, what are you good at doing? Let me rephrase that. Not what you think you're good at doing, what you're actually good at. Ask your wife. They have a way of just whittling that thing down for us. Ask your kids, what are you good at doing? Max Lucado wrote a book called The Cure for the Common Life, Living in Your Sweet Spot. Do we have that book cover? Do we have that? It's up there. Okay. We're actually going to use this book in the first part of the year, and we're going to do some classes on it. But Max Lucado said the whole book's on living in your sweet spot. What are you good at, and what are you good at doing? And he says this in asking what are you good at doing. He asked this: what is in your knapsack? Your knapsack. That's a term he coins, and in other words, what do you have a knack for doing? What skills do you have that make you special and point to your destiny, how God designed you? And it's different for everyone. See, we think that we have to have someone else's sweet spot. No, you have to find yours so you can become great. What are you good at doing? Some people are really good at leading. Some people are really good at organizing things. I have some friends who have the administrative capacity to do things. They can administrate large companies and organizations. It's just easy for them. They're good at doing it. Some people are good at building things with their hands. Some people are highly creative and good on computers and designing things. Do you enjoy being with people, or do you enjoy doing things behind the scenes? What are you good at doing? What has God given you a knack for doing? What skill set? What skills and talent has God given you that allows you to rise above average, that allows you to go above and beyond what other people are able to do? We have to find that, And then we have to develop it until we become special. Let me show you a time where this happened in the Scripture. Exodus 31, verse 1 through 7. Now God has just laid out all of the design for the worship, for the tabernacle in the desert. And it was, it was incredibly intrinsic design, very skilled. They had to make works in bronze and gold and silver and wood and linens. And it says this, "Then the Lord said to Moses, 'See, I have chosen Buzzelli, son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, and I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with wisdom, with understanding, with knowledge, and with all kinds of skill, to make artistic designs for work in gold, silver, bronze, to cut and set stones, to work in wood, and to engage in all kinds of crafts. Moreover, I have appointed Aholiab, son of Ahishamach, of the tribe of Dan, to help him. Also, I have given ability to all the skilled workers to make everything I have commanded you, the tent of meeting, the ark of the covenant law with the atonement cover on it, and with all of the other furnishings of the tent.'" So, but what does it say? It says that God had given a guy named Buzzelli and his helper, Aholiab, a specific skill set to make all of these just carefully designed things in gold and silver and bronze and wood. He'd give them a skill set. So what he was saying was, for them, it's not going to be work. It's right in their sweet spot. I have given them the ability to do that. Now, I was thinking about it this week, and if you read everything that they made and the amounts of gold, bronze, and silver, it's overwhelming. It is overwhelming. But here's what I thought. What if God would have asked me to do that? I'd have been so frustrated. I mean, they'd had a special gold plate that was sacred, and it would be lopsided. Get it out of here. It's the best I can do. I mean, the tent would be, the Leaning Tower of Pisa in the wilderness. It just wouldn't be good. Even though I would have tried it the very best I could, it would not have been good because it's not in my sweet spot. It's not how God created me. He did not give me skills and talents to do that. So when you discover what you're good at doing, the next question is this: what do you love to do? What do you love to do? You know that studies show that 70% of Americans hate their jobs? 70% of Americans hate their jobs. They go to work and they're being faithful because they're going to provide for their families, but they don't enjoy their work. They don't enjoy what they do. They're just enduring. Now, don't go out tomorrow and quit your job, and don't go tell your boss and your family that my pastor said that I'm just living an average life and I want to be above average, so I'm going to quit my job. No, you may need to do some work in figuring out what is my sweet spot, what am I good at doing, and what do I love to do, and make some arrangements until you get there. Don't just go quit your job. But so many people, they never discover their sweet spot, so they're just working through life, and life is so much work and toil, and they're just kind of on survival mode. When you find your sweet spot, when you discover what you're good at doing and what you love to do, then even though every job has setbacks and drawbacks, the truth is it becomes more like a destiny than it does a laborious work. When you discover what God designed you to do and get in alignment with that revelation, again, it doesn't feel like work, it feels like enjoyment. Well, how do we make this discovery? I think there's two things. First of all, look back on your life. Just think about your life. Look back on your life and think about this. What have I consistently done well? What have I consistently done well, and what have I loved to do? What have I really enjoyed? And Max Lucado says this: if you stand at the intersection between your affections, what you love, and your successes, what you're good at, you'll find your uniqueness. What you love to do and what you're good at doing. And it's not that complicated. What do I love to do and what am I really good at doing? That's where you'll find your sweet spot. Sometimes here's the problem in life. Sometimes we're okay at something. We're good at something. We'll never be great. And what happens is, as we go through life, people give us a position. that we can do, but we're never going to be great at it. And sometimes we get locked into that position just because it's something needed, and that position later on becomes an entrapment of our freedom. Because we don't love doing it, we're just kind of good at doing it. Let me give you an illustration. So one time a while back, I hired a youth pastor. Well, the youth pastor had been working part-time and everything, so we're talking about, do you want to come on full-time or whatever? And he kept saying, well, I don't really know. And I said, well, I need to bring somebody on. And so he's like, yeah, I'm going to do it. Well, what we discovered is he actually hated working at the church. He didn't hate the church. He hated going into an office. He had worked outside with his hands the whole time. His sweet spot was working outside with his hands. That's what he enjoyed doing. That's what he was good at doing. And so we found that out, and hey, we released him because I didn't want to imprison anybody, and he's happy. But what happened is, just because you can do something, it doesn't mean it's your sweet spot. It doesn't mean it's what's going to cause you to excel in life. So your sweet spot is something that you're good at doing and something that you love to do. So some of you perhaps fly a lot, and there's something very interesting. When you get on a plane, it's very interesting the different attitudes that the flight attendants have. So you get on one plane and the flight attendant, they're just mean. Like, you're scared to ask them for a bag of peanuts, Can I have a refund? Never mind. They're mean, they're curt, it's apparent they don't like their job. So one time, my friend and I were on a plane, and this flight attendant was memorizing people's names before we took off. And she said, anyone need anything? And just, going over the top. And so my friend asked her, he said, man, you love your job, don't you? She said, I absolutely love my job. I love talking to people. I love interacting with people. I love serving people. She said, when I started my career off, I was a school teacher, and I loved it. I loved interacting with the kids and teaching the kids. I loved interacting with the parents. But she said, I did so good at my job that they promoted me to an administrative position. And so I had to go to an office and sit in an office all day. I couldn't talk to people. I was running reports on a computer. She said it was the worst thing I ever did, so I quit that job, and I became a flight attendant, and I love it. So what was she saying? Her sweet spot was not to be in an office somewhere locked up. Now, some of you absolutely would love to be locked up somewhere in an office where you didn't have to talk to people. I'm telling you, that is my sweet spot. I don't have to see people. I can get there early, walk through before everyone gets there, get my coffee, and go in there, and I am really, really good with that. So the point of this message is this: to be above average, you have to find your sweet spot. What are you good at doing, and what do you love to do? Your sweet spot lies at the intersection between what you love to do, your affections, and what you're good at doing, your skill set. And the last thing we're going to talk about today, but I'm going to talk about it for a while here, is that people who want to be above average, they do more than is asked of them. All right, now I'm going to step on some toes here. How many of you don't mind me stepping on your toes? How many of you actually meant that? People who want to be above average. People who don't want to be below average, they want to be average. People who want to be great. People who want to be successful. People who want to excel in life. They always do more than is asked of them. And someone said, well, where are you going to get that in the Bible? I have a great illustration for that. It's in Genesis chapter 24. Let me tell you this story. At this time, if you remember, Abraham and his wife Sarah, they had the promised son, Isaac. Isaac is now 40 years old, and he's still happy living at home. He's not married, and his mother dies. Sarah dies, and Abraham is worried about him. He wants to comfort him, so he decides, hey, I need to get Isaac a wife. And so he calls in his most trusted servant, and he says this: I want you to swear to me that you will find a wife for my son Isaac. And he said, but here's the deal. You cannot find him a wife here. I don't want him to have a Canaanite wife. I want you to go back to the land of my ancestry, back to a town called Nahor. And I want you to go there and find a wife for my son Isaac. And it's a long story, actually. And so his servant says he'll do that. He loads up 10 camels. 10 camels, because Abraham is very wealthy. We read that last week. Very wealthy in cattle, livestock, silver, and gold. God had blessed him. And so they load up 10 camels. 10 camels to go find a woman. Now, what would you do? How many of you have daughters? What would you do if a guy just showed up at your door with 10 camels loaded with incredible wealth and said, I want your daughter for my son's wife? I was getting tired of her anyway. Take her on, right? What do you do? I'm kidding. You wouldn't do that. I'm sure your daughters aren't for sale, right? Bad illustration. Let's just move on. And so, but this is the way it worked back then. There was a dowry. You gave gifts to get a quality wife. And so also the 10 camels, all this stuff were supposed to be a sign to the people, your master, this is what he has. He's very wealthy, very great. And so he goes there and he gets outside of Nahor and he's thinking, how will I be able to discern which woman it is? And so he says, God, I pray that you'll grant me this request, that when the women come out to get water, I will ask them for a drink. And the woman who says, yes, I'll get you a drink and I'll water your 10 camels, may that be the one. And of course, the first one that came out was Rebekah. And Rebekah said, sure, my Lord, here, I'll get you a drink and I'll water all of your camels. And it goes on to say this, that she watered all 10 of these camels until they were completely satisfied. Now, here's a thought. How much can a thirsty camel drink? Well, here's the deal. Google says that a thirsty camel can drink 30 gallons of water in 13 minutes. I don't know if that's factually correct. We're going with Google. So a thirsty camel can drink 13 gallons of water in 30 minutes. There's 10 camels. That means that Rebekah had to pull 300 gallons of water. 300 gallons of water. Draw it down in a well. The bucket's probably about a gallon. 300 times, and the servant's just sitting back there saying, I think she's going to make a great wife. I think she is going to make an awesome wife. My goodness. So here's the thing. Rebekah proved herself in service, and one of the great qualities about Rebekah is she didn't just do what was asked of her to give him a drink. She did a little bit more. She went above and beyond. She extended service to one man getting him a drink to getting 300 gallons of water for camels until they were fully satisfied. And so I want you to think of this. People who are average do what is asked of them. People who want to be great, they do a little bit more. They go a little bit farther. They don't just settle for what's asked of them, what's required of them. They do a little bit more. So I want to ask you something. Everyone wants to be blessed. Everyone wants to get promotions, and everyone wants to be praised and all that. Do you do what is required of you? Do you do the bare minimum, or you do a little bit more? Do you go above and beyond where you think you need to be? Do you go the extra mile in life? See, average companies do what their clients ask of them. Great companies go beyond that, and they do a little bit more. What can we do to go above and beyond what the market, what our clientele would want? See, an average marriage, the husband and wife, they just do the bare minimum of what each one of them is asked to do. But a successful marriage, they go above and beyond. Guys, let me give you an illustration. Your wife cooks a meal. She spends time cooking this meal. You're eating it in the living room on a little tray there, and your wife asks you, could you take your plate from there and put it in the sink? If you take your plate and put it in the sink, see, that's just doing what's asked of you. Why can't you wipe down the counters, clean the dishwashers? Come on, ladies, work with me here. Come on. Clean a couple commodes on the way to the room. See, average marriages, they're trying to pacify each other. A great marriage goes above and beyond. They do a little bit more. Not just what it's expected, not just what it required. They go above and beyond to try to show love and affection, for their spouses. If you want to be an average employee, just do what's required. Do what's required. If you want to be a great employee, you want to get promoted, you want to rise in the company, you want to make a good showing for yourself, then do a little bit more. Then do a little bit more. Don't just show up on time. Don't show up on late. Show up early. Bring a good attitude with you. Look for areas that you can serve and do things to be a blessing. When somebody asks you to do something, when they need a volunteer, volunteer to do it. Stay late if you need to. I mean, again, an average employee has low expectations of themselves and everyone else. Great employees, what they say is, I'm going to set myself apart because I'm going to go above and beyond what other people do. And successful people, they do a little bit more. I'll never forget, I was 18 years old. I was in the military, and we were preparing for this big field operation. We were going to go out into the field for 30 days, and we had all these inspections along the way. So I had a lieutenant that was from West Point, and again, I'm 18 years old, and what an 18-year-old soldier, what they dream of is that when they put their dress uniform on, they actually have some medals there, because we don't have anything, just one little thing there that we didn't earn. And so I say, hey, LT, I have a question for you. I have a little bargain for you. If we were to score really high on this thing, you think you could put us in for an AAM, an Army Achievement Medal? And he looked at me and he said, so you want me to give you a medal for doing your job? Well, when you put it that way, when you put it that way, he's like, how about you go do your job, or I give you a demotion? Again, no one likes a smart aleck. No one likes a smart aleck, anything. But what was he saying? Should we deserve to be praised and glorified and uplifted by doing average? Should we be blessed, or should we be rewarded for doing average? No. Another Army illustration. So when I was in boot camp, again, 18 years old, and so there's 110 guys here, and this person comes up, and I see him talking to the drill sergeant, and they ask something. And so they come up, it's at the end of the day, and they say, hey, we need a volunteer to go help us do something. Well, I'm thinking what everyone else is thinking. At the end of the day, when you volunteer for something, it's never good. It's going to go on a couple hours, so not one of us raised our hands. And I have never seen somebody lose his mind like my drill sergeant did. And he we're out in El Paso in the heat, and in the military, the term is that he just smoked us for an hour. Up, downs, push-ups, and everything. And all the while walking up and down the aisles saying, y'all are the sorriest group of soldiers I've ever seen. You are the laziest group of soldiers. You're not back on the block. The Army owns you. We own you. And you know what? As long as you're in my Army, if someone asks you for something, you raise your hand. You raise your hand. So for the next 8 weeks, every time someone just even approached us, we just raised our hands. Raise our hands, take me. You'd hoping it's not you. Well, here's the point. Average people do the bare minimum and expect to be praised. Successful people, above average people, do a little more without any expectations. They just do it because that's what you do. That's what you want to do. It's what you're supposed to do. How about this? People who want to be above average in their spiritual walk, they do a little more. They do a little more. The average Christian, I don't even think that they ever even read their Bible or open their Bible. So if you want to be a great Christian, if you want to be a successful Christian, if you want your faith to grow, you do a little bit more. You pull out your Bible and you read it. You spend more time in prayer. You do things that revitalize and inspire your spiritual life, like come to church, find a place to serve. If you're serving in church, how about this? Do a little bit more. A lot of volunteers just show up on time or show up late. Show up early and be prepared. Be prayed up and ready to go. Again, people who want to excel in their spiritual lives, they do a little bit more than people who don't. Some people just expect God to bless them all the time, and they haven't been obedient to God. They haven't obeyed some of the things He's asked them to do. And so, again, that's the difference between average and going above average. So, in closing, Here's the thought. Successful people, if we anything but average, we don't want to be average. So successful people, first of all, they find their sweet spot in life. They find what they're affectionate about doing, what they love to do, at the intersection of what they're good at doing. That's your sweet spot, what you're good at doing, what you love to do. And when they find that, they put all their energies into reaching their maximum potential in that area. We can only be great at one thing. We can only be great at one thing. We can't be great at everything. That's a lie. That's a falsehood of our society. And the second thing is this: successful people do a little bit more. They're willing to go the extra mile to help themselves and others. Would you stand with me this morning?